Well, welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm delighted to be joined by Gerardo here, who's a partner software development engineer and architect at Microsoft. And he's going to spend the next 15 minutes or so really talking about what they're doing with their Azure Edge infrastructure. So, welcome, Gerardo.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to be talking about Azure Edge infrastructure and why Microsoft is using FIDO Device Onboarding. Just to begin, again, I'm Gerardo Diaz Cuellar. I'm a partner software engineer and architect at Microsoft, and I'm a part of the group that is from Microsoft that is engaging and participating in the FIDO Device Onboard standard. And part of my team is Deepti Rajput, principal software engineer, which is the co-chair in that same group. And we wanted to start by talking about the challenges that we see in edge deployments, right? We have right now in our current landscape a very complicated device supply chain where there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of parties um, entering into the mix, participating, touching the devices, and this complicates things in a very substantial way. And customers, we are keep hearing feedback that the main points for customers is that this is too complicated. They want a simplified management and provision device experience, right? Devices are often not made to the specifications of the customer. They they're not specifically pre-canned because it's too costly to do that in many cases. Sometimes you can get some configurations the way you need them, but every time we add more configuration in the supply chain, it means increased inventory costs and complexity in all these big pipeline, in all the supply chain that we have been discussed. And also in our environments, on the edge deployments, right, on industrial scenarios, on retail scenarios, we found that devices are not homogeneous. There is no standard hardware solution for edge devices. We range from big servers to all the way to small, low-cost devices that provide the job for just the right level of compute for the specific customer. So any solution that will help simplify this problem has to consider this wide scale variety of issues. And because of these problems, we always have and end up with a lot of human intervention, which causes problems. It's error prone. We get opportunities for attack, and it's just costly and it's just complexity that makes downtime higher. Right? Um, in a few seconds, I'm going to show you a demo of Azure Edge infrastructure. And this Azure Edge infrastructure is designed to address these problems that we've been talking about. It embraces Azure Arc, which is Microsoft control plane to establish a centralized and consistent management and monitoring story across on-cloud and on-premises devices, regardless of where they are. It embraces FIDO Device Onboard to automate the provisioning process and does so from the cloud and facilitates zero-touch provisioning. The minimizing human intervention as much as possible. The goal is that no human is required to provision the device other than power a cable cord. And the benefit is that we're bringing the power of the cloud to this complex landscape. Right? It simplifies the operations and simplifies the deployment, accelerates the operations and deployments across industrial and retail scenarios, which is where our customers want to go. So with that, uh, let's go and show the video.
Azure Local, enabled by Azure Arc, extends the power of the cloud to your distributed locations. Sometimes that means powerful servers in a rack, but it doesn't have to. If you have light computing requirements or a constrained budget, you don't need an elaborate or expensive setup. Let me show you. In this demo, I'm going to start from scratch and use just the things on the table here to create an infrastructure that can run all my workloads, VMs and containers alike. We'll see how you can use low-cost hardware, conveniently install machines from the cloud, and keep it simple with local identities, no on-prem Active Directory needed. You should know that some of these are preview features that are still in development, so they could change before they're generally available in 2025. Okay, let's dive in. The minimum hardware you need is just one compatible machine with one extra SSD besides the boot disk and simple 1 gigabit Ethernet networking, although it's important to note that it needs to work with virtualization. For this demo, I'll show a 2-machine setup that enables local high availability, and I'll use this great little computer, which I've spec'd out with a 4-core Intel Xeon processor, 64 gigs of memory, and a little 1 terabyte SSD. The first step is just to plug things in, so that means power and Ethernet. In my case, each machine has 2 ports, so I'll connect them both because I can use it later to separate traffic. Next, we've got to install the software. Now, sometimes machines like this will come pre-installed, but in my case, I kitted out the memory and storage myself, so they didn't. But that's okay, because a cool new approach to provisioning machines enabled by Azure Arc is going to let me do this without even attaching a keyboard and monitor. Check this out. This USB contains a little restricted OS whose only job is to securely connect to the cloud. All I have to do here on site is plug it in, power on, and then wait until it powers back off again, which takes a few minutes. And then I can repeat for the other machine. Now, when these machines boot, they'll automatically connect to the cloud, which means from this point forward, I can do everything else remotely, like from my laptop. The trick is that on that same USB, there's now a little cryptographic voucher for each of these machines. That's what these 2 folders are, named after the serial numbers. I'll need these to claim the machines in the cloud. This is what prevents someone else from claiming them. So let's do it. Let's head to the Azure portal, and we can maximize and navigate to Azure Arc. The first thing I'm going to do is create what's called a site. This helps me organize my things spatially. I'm in Redmond, so I'll call it Redmond. It'll correspond to a resource group called Redmond, and then I'll go ahead and create. This is all just metadata, so it's very quick. Once that's done, back in Azure Arc, let's go to this new area called provisioning. From here, I can install and configure the software that I want, including the operating system, onto these machines completely from the cloud. It's really cool. I'll click Provision, choose my Redmond site, and then add and upload the voucher for the first machine, and then add and upload the voucher for the second machine. Next, I can choose which OS to install. I'll go with 24H2, and then set the local administrator account. And then create. This takes a while because behind the scenes, it's doing a lot. It's downloading the OS that I chose, installing it onto the physical machine, booting into it, configuring it, and then registering as an Azure Arc enabled machine in the site that I chose. When it's all done, back in Azure Arc under Machines, voila, there they are, ready to go. I just set up these machines end to end without ever plugging in a keyboard and monitor. More importantly, if these machines had been destined for some faraway place, I could just ship them and the recipient would just plug them in. They wouldn't need any credentials or tech expertise. In fact, you can imagine that someday they might come from the OEM like this, and I just get the voucher that I need with the purchase order.
Well, let's talk about a little bit of the key features in this demo. While not discussed in the video, all this was possible because Microsoft is embracing FIDO Device Onboard standards. With zero-touch provisioning onboarding, devices can automatically connect to Azure services upon activation, right? And because we are embracing these standards, we can ensure that our applications and the processes to set up the infrastructure has superior security, what our customers demand and need, including the supply chain attacks that we have all been familiar with in the industry. This is where we want our customers to go and the level of protection that we want our customers to have. And lastly, this is vendor neutral. Because we're leveraging standards, we can work across many different types of devices from many different types of manufacturers, enable an interoperable environment and an interoperable edge infrastructure, right? You can choose your computers and Microsoft can still participate with them and put Azure on them and make them work and bring the power of the cloud to them, right? Some of the advantages of the Azure Adaptive Cloud are that we are reducing the deployment timeline, right? Every single time we're managing infrastructure, We have a lot of setup to do, and when we have to replace equipment, we have a lot of processes to do, but all that is largely simplified with what you just saw, right? We reduce downtime, we reduce deployment timelines, replacement and setup are reduced for on-prem, cloud, and edge compute devices. We have a scalable operation. Zero human intervention is required, and we can use this we can use this technology to deploy infrastructure across a wide variety of locations using distributed systems and making distributed systems capable worldwide, right? We can enhance the resiliency of these systems. We use the most secure and most consistent technology available to make sure that the technology is there and appropriately set up, that you are connected to ARC, that you can always manage it, that you can always have telemetry on it, and that we can even do this in disconnected and low connectivity scenarios. And finally, we just want to point and reiterate that this is seamless. There's minimal human intervention, which simplifies the cost, again, reduces downtime, and increases security. So to conclude, the Azure Edge ecosystem integrates seamlessly with Azure Arc, with Azure Cloud, and with Azure IoT for operations. We can leverage the power of the cloud to take that power to industrial scenarios, to retail scenarios, to on-premise scenarios, all with a consistent view. And all of that is possible because we're embracing FIDO Device Onboard standards. We're allowing new innovations to take place by all of our partners when they engage in the Edge ecosystem and bringing new scenarios to their businesses. And I know all of this is possible because we're using the FDO. And thank you very much. I hope this was useful.
Roger, thank you very much indeed for that presentation. Great to see the story come together. And you've been a very active member of our technical working group, so it's great to hear you present and tell people about what's going on behind the curtain. And for those, I'm sure you did spot it, but there was an opportunity there to look at the new Azure Edge solution. Gerardo put a link so that if you want to put yourself on the waiting list to gain access to this capability, you can do so. So thank you very much for the presentation. And again, Gerardo will be joining us for the panel. We're now going to take a short break, and then we're going to be talking about the future of FDO. Where does it go next with Brad Goodman? So be back in just a second.